Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I have been wanting to make a Quilt of Valor for a long time now, and I think this is the summer to do it. A Quilt of Valor is a quilt that will be donated to the Quilt of Valor Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that awards quilts to veterans who have been touched by war. I think that's their exact language in their mission statement, veterans who have been touched by war. I feel a little bit of pressure for this quilt in a positive way because I really want it to be kind of the best of the best. This is going to be going to a veteran who has kind of not only put their life on the line for our country, but also sacrificed, sometimes many years of their life away from their family, away from their friends. And I really appreciate that, and I want to show my appreciation to them in this quilt. What I'm concerned about, because I am a relatively new quilter, is making a quilt and then having the recipient be like, oh, this is really nice, but it being more of a thought that counts quilt. Like, I really don't want this to be a thought that counts quilt. I want the recipient to be like, wow, the person who made this quilt must really appreciate my service to my country, because they obviously put a lot of time and love into this quilt. But that's a little bit of pressure, right? So the way I have taken the pressure off is I'm gonna just start making stuff. So this is gonna be a little bit of a longer term project. It's probably gonna be for the summer. So I will be kind of doing other projects simultaneously and posting other videos kind of in between these Quilts of Valor videos, because this Quilt of Valor project will be a multi-episode project. So that will take the pressure off a little bit, because I can just take my time and I can kind of make stuff, and the best of the stuff will go in this Quilt of Valor, this Quilt of Valor quilt. And everything else will kind of go in separate projects. I'll still use the items, but they'll go somewhere else. So the first step was the most exciting always in any quilt, which is picking out the fabric. And I bought far more fabric than I will need, because I wanted to have some options. I wanted to have some choices. So here's a little, we'll take a closer look at the fabric, but here's a little sneak peek. There it is. There's a lot of it. There's 4 stacks of it. But I just wanted to have choices. So I kind of went with a patriotic color scheme. I'm going with the red, white, and blue, but I'm going with kind of creams and ivories instead of the white, and I'm going with more burgundy instead of the red, that kind of thing, which I think will just make it kind of sophisticated. The other thing about the fabric, which might be a little controversial, but I really wanted to not use florals, which are really hard to find, surprisingly, non-florals. I realized that this quilt can be going to a man or a woman. I also realized that men can love flowers. My husband loves flowers. He's always buying flowers, and he loves gardening in our yard, and I know that is a very manly man thing, is flowers, but not all men like flowers. I kind of wanted to go with more geometric prints, stripes, non-floral things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the fabric. So this one is the lightest blue one that I have here, and I'm not sure how I feel about the bits of white in it, but it will certainly go with the red, white, and blue. Now, as I mentioned, I am going for more of the creams, but I do have little pieces of white. Like this one is more ivory, but it's more white ivory, and I think that just the little pop of white will be okay. It'll add a little bit of dimension. I can also cut around these white pieces, have them get caught in the seam allowance, so I don't necessarily have to use them. So that's the first one. Let's see what else we have here. So this is kind of the fabric that I started with. This is the one that I actually bought this fabric a couple months ago, knowing that I was going to make this Quilt of Valor, and wanted to kind of just sit with the fabric and think about it for a while. So I've been thinking about this for a long time now, but this is the fabric that I started with. And when I went back to the store, I didn't realize this, but they have, I don't know if it's the same fabric. I think it's different. I wonder if it's by the same company. Let's check. Dan Morris Designs 2018. Let's see what this is. Dan Morris Designs. So it's by the same, this is by the same person. So it looks like the eagles are a little bit different, but it has the stars and kind of just this hint of an eagle. So that's pretty perfect. I also have a third one, which has the eagles as well. Here's another kind of lighter blue. Most of the blues that I'm working with are a little darker. Here's another, this is a navy that has kind of the background in the pure white. So I am having, what I'm realizing as I'm filming this is I do have some pure white and then I do have some ivory. And I'm actually, typically I don't like to match or mix the pure white and the ivories. I like to keep it all the same, but I'm actually okay with it in this case, I think. And if I'm not, I can change it up. This one's a little more ivory background, and I do like the hearts here. I had gone back and forth about the hearts, if I wanted hearts on this quilt. I just didn't know if that was something that I wanted, but I think in this context, they do look kind of sophisticated and handsome. So I went with the hearts. I might use them, I might not. Then I have this fabric, which is similar to the first fabric that we saw. And then I got this fabric. So I was having a really hard time finding reds. Kind of reds of any kind, and this I felt wasn't too floral. It was more leaf-like, and I might not use the middle brown strip. I'm not sure it goes in that color scheme, but I could cut out these red pieces and make, you know, 2-inch squares or whatever I need to make for my blocks with this red, or I could use the red as a border. Then I got this red. This is actually kind of a modern pattern. This is called grunge. And so it's supposed to be kind of hip and, you know, urban city-like, but I think in this context, it actually goes really well. So I got this and I like it. Then I have this, which I was worried looked too much like shirt fabric, but I do love a stripe. And I think even if it's like the binding or a sashing or something, I think this could look nice. And it is a little bit more, it's a different tone than these other reds. So these other reds are kind of all in the same palette here, but then this burgundy stripe mixes it up a bit, which I like. This might be my favorite. I love the clean lines. I love the stars. It is the patriotic. Now I couldn't tell, and I can in this light, but I couldn't tell if this was black or navy. And it is navy, but it is such a dark navy that in most lights it looks black. So I don't know if it's too dark to go with this stuff, but I actually really like it with most of these fabrics. I think that even with the other blues that I have, it goes nicely. So I might use this, but it might just be too dark. We'll have to find out. And then I had a couple fabrics that I already had from items I had purchased for other projects. I had been wanting to make a Jane Deere quilt, which if you know what a Jane Deere quilt, it's insane that I would want to do that. But I had bought these fabrics to make a Dear Jane quilt, and I haven't gotten around to that quilt yet, though I still want to. But I figured I could use these for this project as well, these kind of blues. This one particularly has kind of this ivory background with this nice stripe, this nice blue stripe. And then these I had on hand. I only have a little bit of this. I had made a face mask with these, so I don't have very much of this, but I have a little bit of this blue, which is super appropriate. And then in addition to the blue, I also have just the tiniest bit of this. I think I have 2 pieces. I have a piece this big and then another piece that big. So like almost nothing. But it's definitely enough to make a couple blocks. I could probably make 2 blocks with these. Lastly, so the first part of this quilt that I want to make, so here are a bunch of browns and tans, which you might think, that doesn't necessarily go with the theme, but I have this template for a really large eagle, and I wanted to give it a try. It might be one of those things where I try it and it looks kind of ridiculous and amateur-like, in which case, like I mentioned, I'll put it in another project, but I think there is a potential for it to look really cool. So this fabric I didn't buy yesterday. This fabric I had from another project, but it's a brown. So these would all be like the wings and the feathers and things like that. And all these other fabrics I did buy yesterday. So I'm gonna try this eagle. It's actually the first thing that I'm going to make. I'm gonna make it in this episode. I had bought this. This is actually one of the first fabrics that I had ever bought for a quilt ever. This was one of my first quilts. I think it was my second quilt that ever made, and it was a bee-themed baby blanket for my cousin's baby, and I had used all of it up. So I went to the store and I saw that they had this, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Not only does it go with my eagle, but it will be a little walk down memory lane. And then we saw this one, that's the eagle. And then this stripe, this is a French General fabric. And that's it. So that's a lot. So that's a lot of fabric, but I wanted to have a lot of options, and I don't want to go back to the store and buy more fabric. I want to now use what I have. I have plenty. I should be able to figure something out with this. So I don't want to be putting pieces together and be like, oh gosh, I could really use a gray. That's not going to happen. If I don't have it, I'll find something else. And you know, I love to scrap pieces together. Well, I do love scrap quilting, but I wouldn't scrap quilt for this project. But I would put little pieces together to make, you know, interesting blocks, that kind of thing. I love doing that. That's very much my style. I will likely do some of that with this quilt. And first thing I want to do is make that eagle. I do have a template for this eagle, but you do not need a template. Basically, when I say template, I mean I have a drawing of an eagle that I'm tracing. So you can find any eagle and trace it onto, I'm going to be tracing it onto parchment paper, but you can trace it onto tracing paper. You just need to trace it onto some kind of paper. We're not going crazy here. Here's the book that I'm going to be using for this part of the project, America, the Pride of My Heart. To show you what I'm doing, I have a couple options here of eagles. I have this eagle here. I think there's a closer up view. And I'll probably make both eventually. This is the one I'm going to make. That eagle right there is the one that I'm going to make. And here's the other one down here, which I'll try. If the first one goes okay, I'll try this other one down here. But you do not need to buy this book. You can take any image of an eagle and trace it onto parchment paper or tracing paper. So here's the eagle I'm not going to do yet, but I would just start tracing that out if that's the one that I was going to do. So let's find the one that I am going to do. All right, so what I'm going to do, because this is on, you know, 2 pieces of paper here, I'm going to take my parchment paper and trace one piece and then kind of put these pieces together. Let's just see what happens. So as you can see, I'm just tracing this right along here. I've traced most of my eagle. Some of it went off the bottom here, so I'll have to do that separately. But now I'm going to cut out each one of these pieces. So I'll like cut out the head, I'll cut out the top part of the wing, and then each one of these feathers over here I'll cut out. And I'm going to trace them onto fusible interfacing. So one-sided fusible interfacing, meaning one side of the interfacing is sticky by heat. Let me show you what I've done here. I cut this piece out of the parchment paper that I traced, and I have the number 9 on there, and I should write the number 9 on here. So what I did is I traced this piece onto this fusible interfacing. So this top part is, you know, regular, this will not stick. And then the underside, when I heat this, it will stick. It's not sticky yet, but it will be sticky. So I have my fabric right side up. I'm putting the sticky side on the right side of the fabric, which seems counterintuitive, but I will show you what we're gonna do. I'm gonna put my piece under my sewing machine and stitch right along the pencil line, going as slow as I need to go to stay right on that pencil line. Now, what I'm going to do, so I stitched all the way around the pencil line. Now I'm going to cut out, I'm going to cut about 1/4 inch outside of, ooh, that was a little close, outside of the stitching line. Any of these parts that kind of poke in, I'm going to put a cut all the way up to the stitching line, but not through the stitching line. And then cut out a couple triangles towards the top of my curve up here. Next, I separate the fabric with my fingers because I don't want to cut through my fabric. So I separate the interfacing from the fabric, and I'm going to make a little cut, a little X right in the middle here. and I'm going to turn it right side out. I'm going to use my bone folder, bone folder. This is a tool for origami, but I'm going to use it to poke out all of my edges all around here. Here is the base of my eagle head, and I'll do that with all the other pieces of the eagle, the body, the legs, the feathers, the beak, the eye, and then I will show you how to put them together. I have created all the pieces of my eagle. Nothing is ironed down yet. So you can see I have that fusible interfacing on the back that will stick once it gets hot. So what I'll want to do is to take my iron and start pressing these down one at a time. The wings I want to kind of be tucked underneath the body. So you'll want to kind of do this in layers. And I'm going to have to do a little experimenting here because some things need to be tucked in different ways. Luckily with the interfacing, you can peel it up sometimes if need be. So I might need to peel it up at certain times. And then I'll top stitch over each one of the parts of the eagle. I still need to make the eye. I think I'm going to make the eye out of felt because felt doesn't fray, and so I can just cut a circle. I won't have to use the fusible interfacing for that. I'll just put a speck of glue and then top stitch around the eye. I really took my time with this process and redid a lot of the pieces as I went. For example, the body of the eagle I had initially done in this striped fabric, and I changed my mind about that. I just felt like this was a little bit too much. And the wing I had initially made a little smaller and I made it bigger. The beak was a different fabric and shape and size. I felt that just looked a little cartoonish. It was so big. So I redid some pieces. The other thing I realized, but you do not need the parchment paper to trace first. You can just put your fusible interfacing on and you can see through it. So it eliminates a step. I also found I needed another tool in flipping my fabric. So I had my bone folder that we talked about, but then I also needed a pair of tweezers. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start ironing this down. I have my wool pressing mat under this, so I'll just press this right with my iron. So I've ironed everything down, and the next step is I will top stitch on top of each one of these pieces. I'm gonna wait to put the head on and the beak and the arms until I top stitch all of this part first. This is looking pretty good. So I have everything top stitched down. The middle piece here has been ironed down, but it's not top stitched because I need to kind of stick some pieces underneath it, like this claw here, this arm. And so because it's only ironed down, I can still peel it up a little bit to do that. And then I'll kind of put the head on top. And then I'll figure out the eye. Now the eye is where this could all go to hell, because I always find in animals, when you're trying to make stuffed animals or animal drawings, the eyes are always where things start to look creepy and weird. So hopefully the eye will look okay, but time will tell. I finished my eagle, and overall I'm pretty happy with it. I will have some pictures at the end of this video so that you can see it up close, see some of the details, but I think I'm happy with it. I'm not sure if it's gonna end up on my final quilt. There's something maybe a little off. Maybe I've just been looking at it too long and am overly obsessive, but I don't know if I'm loving the face. I don't know if the quality of the sewing is up to par on this. I mean, the top stitching, there is some wonky parts on the top stitching, but I might just be overly obsessing. I think I just need to step away from the eagle for a little while and then come back to it and see what I think. I did want to mention that what this is in quilting terms is appliqué. So most of the time when you're quilting pieces together, you're using straight lines. And whenever you have curved lines, so a lot of flowers, for example, are appliqued. Whenever you have curved lines, circles, things like that, you appliqué them on, which just means you're sewing them, on top of another piece of fabric. So I should clarify that you can sew curves and circles in the regular traditional quilting way, but this is just another way to do it. Also, the original eagle was holding a branch in its talons, I think they're called, a branch in their talons. I decided not to include that because my eagle was getting different enough from the original image that it was going to be hard to get that branch into its talons, and so I just left it off, and I think that that's fine. I don't think the image doesn't feel like it's missing anything to me, so I'm fine with that. Now, I wanted to tell you about the quilting marine. Frequently, almost always, while I'm doing my sewing projects, my quilting, I have YouTube on in the background because you know I love YouTube. And so while I've been working on this eagle, I've been listening to the YouTube channel of the Quilting Marine. Now, the Quilting Marine is this man who loves quilting. He's a veteran, and so I thought, what better channel to be listening to while I'm making my Quilt of Valor than this Quilting Marine. His channel is fantastic. He really is a kindred spirit, and I have really been enjoying watching his videos. One of the things that I loved about one of the videos I was watching of his was his crumb quilting, and what he said is that whenever he's feeling stress, thinking back about his time as a Marine, he goes into his sewing room, shuts the door, and he just scrap quilts, he crumb quilts, and it is very successful in relieving this stress and anxiety or these emotions that he may be feeling around his time as a Marine. And when his blocks are done, his scrap blocks, he calls them emotion blocks, and all of the little crumb pieces, each crumb piece he says is an emotion, and so he has his bag of crumbs, and it's just his bag of emotions, which I think is the coolest thing. So I want to give a shout out to the Quilting Marine, and you should check out his channel. I will see you next time. We'll continue this project. I have my basket here. I'm gonna put the first finished piece of our quilt into the basket. We'll keep adding pieces into the basket, and I will see you next time. Feel free to subscribe. Bye.